to make sure that Donna, as his guardian, gets to sit at that table, that treatment decisions are not made without her consent, that she is fully included in medical decisions. What I have seen in the past, and which seems to have happened in this case, is that when the person is deemed to have a medical condition that involves mental health, all of a sudden they're deemed to have no rights at all. Doctors and hospitals make all the decisions. And unfortunately, there are many times, in many instances, there are forced treatments that are actually damaging to the patient. And, you know, no other field of medicine allows this kind of forced treatment. And there are many people who see psychiatrists and voluntarily and even legally take psychiatric medication. And we don't have a complaint with those persons who feel that that is their best medical choice, and for some patients it is their best medical choice. But it is unwarranted psychiatric treatment that is our concern. We do not know whether there was a seizure situation. Is not a mental health situation. It is a different kind of situation. And the seizure situation that it was caused by too rapid withdrawal of the drug should be treated in a manner to then properly wean him down rather than to just switch him to another drug and then keep him in a hospital for a very long time. So the question here is not whether or not some kind of treatment needs to happen. It is a question about whether the treatment was the appropriate treatment and whether or not his rights were upheld during those decisions.
What about the situation in Arizona? I mean, we finally got him out thanks to Wesley. Again, Wesley got him out. But it just seems like the same situation keeps repeating itself over and over again. Why is that happening? Why haven't we been able to break out of that? Why hasn't she been able to break out of this cycle with these hospitals before now?
Well, the system in the United States in general is a very coercive system. And many people outright disregard the true nature of the law. They use what is called color of law, and they say they do things that they know what's right for the person, that it's okay to ignore the law. And so basically they ignore the input of the medical guardian. It is important to understand that there's a great deal of money to be made using these kinds of medications, keeping people on them for the rest of their lives. And that these medications have very significant adverse side effects, that sometimes patients are actually being treated for the side effects of the actual medication. These seizures themselves were probably a side effect of the rapid withdrawal of a particular medication. So we are dealing with a situation where you're treating what the drug itself might itself create, and that's called iatrogenic. And when that problem is caused by the drug itself or the treatment itself, it's called iatrogenic. And there are many symptoms currently that these medications cause that then cause someone to then be drugged even more with even different drugs. And so it's a constant spiral to more and more drugs. It is a very experienced psychiatrist, a doctor who knows how to use these medications very definitively and carefully and not overuse them. It is instead the norm for most psychiatrists in the United States to actually use these drugs in excess. And the pharmaceutical companies definitely do push for these drugs to be used extensively and in means of which they should not be used. there have been many very important legal decisions that involve this use of medications against people's consent. The United States Supreme Court, in the case of Lucia versus Louisiana, had held that the state could confine somebody if they felt that the individual was mentally ill and dangerous. And that was somewhat mediated by the Kansas versus Crane decision of the U.S. Supreme Court, which said that involuntary commitment should only take place with appropriate, proper procedures and evidentiary standards, and that there has to be a finding of dangerousness either to oneself or others, and that proof of dangerousness must be coupled with additional factors such as mental illness or mental abnormality. And that is kind of the concept of gravely disabled. This is a concept that was in the O'Connor versus Jonathan U.S. Supreme Court decision, that the inability to care for oneself is considered a significant finding. So there are many Supreme Court decisions that support the involuntary commission of people to a mental institution. And we are still working on making sure that the confinement has not been created by the hospital or the doctors themselves for their own purposes and not for the true purposes of treating the patient.
If Donna even get the records...
There are many cases where... Okay, go ahead.
If Donna can't even get the records from these people, how do we... I mean, do we expect them to investigate themselves?
Well, the problem is they won't.
Right.
They will protect themselves from legal liability. They will protect themselves from lawsuits. They will withhold information that is standard. And so getting the full information from the hospital so that Donna can make an informed consent. There's no informed consent if Donna hasn't seen the records, and the records have not been explained to her, and she has not sat down with the team to discuss it. That's not informed consent.
Can you help her? Can your organization find the attorneys that would do for her in this area that Wesley and Candace did in Arizona?
We are recommending that Wesley speak to the Psychiatric Rights Project in Anchorage, Alaska, because that is a very, very knowledgeable organization that has placed cases in front of the Alaska Supreme Court, for example, and they are very knowledgeable in mental health law. I also encouraged him to speak to Tina Minkovich, because Tina Minkovich is very knowledgeable also about mental health law, and we do want to make sure that the law is upheld. There are very few laws that protect patients who are considered mentally disabled, and those few laws that are there, we want to make sure they are upheld, because otherwise the patient has no rights, and patients with no rights can be abused very severely. And to have one's life taken away from you, to be confined to an institution, to be drugged without your consent, to have drugs used one drug 2 weeks and then start another drug for another 2 weeks and then try this drug. I mean, it is not a life that any of us would want to have. And we want to make sure that Mark has the quality of life he deserves, and we want to make sure that the mental health law, what protections exist in the mental health law for him, should be upheld. Under the Americans with Disabilities Act, we know that people who are considered mentally incompetent or mentally ill have difficulty asserting their rights. And we want the psychiatric profession to recognize that the guardian, the legal guardian, is an important balancing measure to make sure that the mental health patients' rights are upheld. And it is unfortunate that it is true that many in the psychiatric profession lie in court in order to obtain forced treatment orders. They withhold information from families in order to hide when they've made mistakes and errors in medication treatment. And it is rare to find a psychiatrist currently now working in mental health that has not exaggerated the dangerousness of a mental ill patient in order to obtain a judicial order for commitment and thus be able to control the patient inside a hospital situation. Unfortunately, this often brings about commitment for persons who would benefit from less severe, less major medical interventions. And there are other means of dealing with mental health disorders. And one of the things that's preeminent in this case is that Mark initially exhibited signs of post-traumatic stress because he was a victim of a life-altering trauma and the Columbine shooting. And it is to his credit, to Mark's credit, that he became a advocate against drug loop, and he wanted to fix all day. And he was able to show resilience and courage in his own recovery in order to be a forceful advocate. One has to question whether or not the psychiatric and pharmaceutical companies are wanting to silence his voice. And once they had him in a position where he was vulnerable, then decided to exaggerate the concept of dangerousness in order to obtain commitment and control over his medical care.
So that muddies the water so much that it's almost impossible to really get a clear picture of it. Are they trying to, my wife, my ex-wife, after I got out of the hospital, after I was obviously able to communicate, it was, the doctors saved your life. And I felt that the doctors had tried to overdose me, had tried to drug me out for 3 months to prevent me from doing radio shows, to prevent me from doing a magazine, to basically arrange for long-term care. Now, am I just being paranoid, or did that happen? I mean, this.
Well, the only way we can tell is to have an independent medical expert review the records. As a layperson, they're very complicated records. We need full and complete disclosure of records so that the records can be viewed by multiple medical experts, and so that the determination can be made whether the treatment was appropriate or not appropriate. The other part of this is that these medical records are very subjective. People write whatever they are predisposed to believe is happening, and oftentimes wordage is used when one word would work, they use a different word because that word means that the person needs to be possibly dead. So instead of this person is fearful, they'll say a person is paranoid. And medical professionals in the psychiatric profession routinely and regularly rewrite records in order to emphasize the legal points of law that will allow them to have full and total control of patient's case legally. And so that they have total control ethically over the case. It is shocking to most Americans that this process, the process of involuntary commitment in our American system, does not have true legal protections for people diagnosed with mental illness. The protections are illusionary. The court proceedings are oftentimes considered just a sham. Oftentimes, the advocates for the patient aren't even included in the legal process. This breeds cynicism and disrespect to the law, demeans the participants, and reinforces shoddy lawyering. Last say, judging and at times even perjurous and corrupt testifying to the court. So mental health advocates and public defender and legal aid service lawyers are going up against a system that is not fair. And when they do not even have the full medical record to review, they are left without the tools they need to make sure that human rights protections exist for the person involved. We need to make sure that judges actually allow the legal guardian to protect the human rights patient involved. And when Donna says that she wishes to have a treatment plan that included taking mark off these medications, when she has repeatedly advocated against these medications publicly, sometimes in front of the FDA, there's a decision designed that way to be considered. And the use of medications against that wish should only be done in extraordinary circumstances where his life would be in danger. I don't see that that's the case here. We are concerned that perhaps these drugs are not being used for the purpose of preventing dangerousness or truly to protect his life, but instead because they are the expected norm of the psychiatric institutions in which he has been placed. And so we wish to question that by fully reviewing the medical records and then having a complete and respectful discussion with the doctors in charge.
If Wesley is jammed up, and I'm sure he is, to have a case before the Supreme Court of such a vital importance as Edgar Steele's case, is not something I would expect him to put on hold. But can we find the attorneys there in Colorado that aren't afraid to go up against the medical industry, that know how to do this? Can she get some help? I mean, I think the reason she calls you and I all the time is because she doesn't know where to turn for help. And
Well, I have been encouraging her to get the medical records. I think that is necessary. I think that Leslie would understand the importance of doing that. I have told her that she does have the power to get those records and that she should do so. And she has been recently successful at being able to get them. Prior to this, they had just ignored her and just told her that she couldn't have them. And with her understanding her rights, her legal rights as the guardian, she has been able to obtain a good portion of these records. And we will now have potentially the ability to have Mark evaluated by an independent medical expert. By that I mean a boarded psychiatrist. And we want to make sure that the person we choose is a person of skill and competence, and also a person who is capable of reviewing these very complicated records and to see whether or not a problem exists. Without seeing the records, we cannot ascertain that. I would say that it's important for us to not take for granted that the doctors are doing what's right or the good thing here. Doctors make mistakes, and doctors do cover up mistakes. And doctors who are potentially looking at a possible medical malpractice liability will definitely cover mistakes. And in mental health law, it is very easy to cover mistakes with medical records. Because the only thing that would tell you how he was doing is his medical records. I mean, for a very, very long time, they didn't even allow his family to see him. So how can his family know how he's doing?
Yeah, I have no idea where that's coming from here, so try to find that. Donna's also worried about...
So I'm hoping that Wesley can help her and will continue to be active on the case. I would encourage him to talk to attorneys and doctors who's an expert in this area of law. I think he would find it very worthwhile to do that. And I also asked him to talk to attorney Tina Minkovich as well, because she is very knowledgeable about the human rights aspects of the law. And I think that because of the very, very complicated nature of these cases, because it is difficult to sometimes get to the bottom of the medical problem that underlines them, it's really important for the lawyer to be able to seek supportive evidence with other attorneys that are knowledgeable.
I don't know where that noise is, that commercial is coming from. It's not on mine. Hopefully that got rid of it here. Let me take a call here for just a second. Janet Parker is my guest, and we're talking about Mark Taylor's case specifically. But it's not just Mark Taylor, is it? Incredible here. I don't know where this is coming from. What have we got here?
Yeah, I feel like my preparation has been good. I think the cross-training has been complete, and I feel really refreshed going in this week.
I don't know where the sound's coming from. I don't even know if you can hear that, but let me try to take a call here. 208. You're on with Clay Douglas.
Clay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Clay, if you can hear me, you're breaking up pretty bad.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, this is Billy. First off, I want to say to Donna, if you're listening, you and Mark are in my prayers. Keep your chin up. I hope for the best support for you. So yeah. I'll definitely be keeping you in my prayers what I can. So, but I have a question that's a little bit off topic, and I'm glad you have somebody who's a doctor on your show. Because I was reading the USA Today this morning before I got off work, and I just want your professional opinion about something that I find rather interesting, yet absurd at the same time. But, I mean, forgive me if this is kind of silly, but the Center for Disease Control having an emergency plan for a zombie apocalypse. Now, I'm saying if this is real, this is something that they're working on, and if it's not real, it's just another way for the government to keep us in fear. What's your professional opinion about all of this?
I don't know anything about the article that you're speaking about. I do know something about the CDC. I was trained as an epidemiologist for zoonotic diseases that transfer from the animal to man for the CDC. And as such, I took training in bioterrorist investigation with the CDC. So I'm very familiar with their risk management procedures. I would say that the CDC has to be prepared to deal with any emergency that might occur that involves a medical problem. And I don't know anything about this. What did you call it?
Zombie apocalypse. Basically, the monsters we see in the movies being a reality. Which,
you know, I guess there are beliefs for some people that something like that could potentially happen. I mean, there are chemical and biological weapons that cause massive destruction, and those are real threats.
Matter of fact,
already have been used, and the CDC does have a plan to manage communication and disaster response. There is a law that allows the CDC in situations of public emergency that involve a medical situation, such as a rampant disease spread, to take very extensive measures to prevent the spread of disease and to swoop in with the force of the government using oftentimes the National Guard and other military structures in order to provide disaster and emergency care to the public. And so the having a plan is a good thing. So.
All right, Billy, thank you for your call. I appreciate you listening.
But I don't know anything about
zombie apocalypse. Not me neither. But you know, Hollywood does predict a lot of interesting natural disasters that come true later. All right, is this? Okay. I want to ask you about that, though. I think we are in an apocalypse right now. I think more people die from prescription drugs than die from all the cocaine, heroin, or methamphetamine shipped into the country by our drug cartels. But I think that the American people are literally being bombarded with drugs. I think more Americans are on some type of drugs, Prozac, Ritalin, you know, some type of drug here that it's almost mind-boggling. It's almost a repeat of what